Today, I'm going to talk about how your high 401k balance might be your biggest risk in retirement. As a financial planner, I've noticed that many people assume a large savings is the key to secure their retirement. However, it can actually do more harm than good. That's why in this video, I'm going to show you why your 401k could be putting you at risk and share helpful strategies to get you back on track for retirement. So let's get right into it. One of the biggest issues I see as a financial planner working with and talking with people who are getting close to retirement or in retirement is that they focus most of their career saving and building up in pre-tax retirement accounts like 401ks. Now, obviously, saving for retirement aggressively and making sure you have a large nest egg is a great idea. However, there are definitely shortcomings and drawbacks to this type of strategy. With a pre-tax retirement account, you're setting yourself up for maybe what you would call a tax time bomb when you're in retirement. And this saving aggressively in your 401k is what I see with most people is done based on just outdated or uninformed perspectives. Many people just assume from the get-go that the best way to save for retirement is by loading up their 401k with as much savings as possible, when in reality, that may not actually be the best approach. One of the other underlying beliefs that people have that hold them back and that cause them to save a lot is they also assume that when they're in retirement, they're going to have a lower tax bracket. And so it makes sense to get tax deductions now and go ahead and pay taxes in the future. They also assume perhaps that they're going to need less income. And so the assumption is if I need less income, I'm going to have less income. And so my taxes will be lower. Now, these assumptions could be the case in your situation, but it is not always the case. And so this is where someone can get into some big issues. Some of the biggest issues with building up large balances in a 401k come from once you're in retirement, being forced to take out more money than you need to because of required minimum distributions. Now, luckily, because of recent laws, because of the Secure Act, now if you're watching this video and you're younger, you're not forced to take money out of your 401k until you're 75 years old. But once you hit that point, you have to begin taking out a percentage of your portfolio every single year for the rest of your life. And that amount that you have to take out increases every single year. Now, whether you need the income or not, you have to take the money out or else you face a 50% penalty for not taking out your required minimum distribution. So this puts people in an awkward situation where they're forced to take out money, they don't need it, and so what it does is it causes them to build up huge tax bills that are really, frankly, if a little bit of planning is done on the front end, are completely avoidable or largely avoidable. And so in this video, I'm going to lay out a case study of some retirees who are looking to retire in about 10 years. They're 55 years old, and they have up to this point only been saving in a 401k. And I'm going to illustrate some of the strategies that can be employed to take somebody who's just kind of on this rule of thumb approach saving for retirement compared with some tax smart planning that can be done pre-retirement and once you're in retirement to overall have a better outcome. When I talk about better outcome in retirement, it's not just about, the objective here is not just to simply pay less taxes. Now, obviously, all else being equal, paying less taxes is preferable. However, the objective here is to meet your financial goals in retirement, to have the lifestyle that you want. And so really keeping that in mind is I think essential, because we can kind of skew the plan or get kind of twisted in our planning if our objective is only to pay less taxes. We have to take a bigger, more holistic approach to say, what is the tax planning strategy that is going to serve you in your retirement and is going to serve you right now in your other goals as you're preparing for retirement? What strategies are going to get you there the best? Now, before I go ahead and lay out this case study for our retirees, I want to use an example. I was in the Army before I became a financial planner, and my job in the Army was that of a combat engineer. And I like to use the example of what a combat engineer does in the Army to illustrate the importance of a good tax plan and really, from a big picture, how to go about doing it well. So as a combat engineer, a little bit of backup. What a combat engineer does, their role is to shape the battlefield. So if you imagine that we're in a land war with somebody else and we want to be able to control what the enemy does or what they don't do, we want to put ourselves in the best favorable position as possible, then there's things that an engineer comes on the scene to do. So for example, let's say that you want to block off an area so the enemy can't get through a certain area. Well, an engineer might do something like lay mines or set up concertina wire or put up other fixed fortified positions to make it difficult for an enemy to use a particular area. Or you might, blow up a bridge so they're denied access across a certain point, or mine a road so it's difficult to use. So a combat engineer's role is to shape the battlefield from a big picture view, looking out over the battle space. What can we do to put ourselves in the most favorable position and disadvantage our enemy as much as possible? So when it comes to tax planning, to start with, we have to survey the battlefield. And what I mean by this is we have to map out your spending and your income from right now, whether you're still working, or you're already in retirement. We have to map out your income from now and project it through all the way to the end of your life so that we can have a good survey, we can have a good view of the opportunity set. Because when we look at your cash flows from now all the way to the end, we can start to see opportunities. And we can see opportunities where we might be able to, employ tax strategies to improve your situation. It also helps us answer key questions like, will your income be higher or lower in retirement? And that can already influence decisions that we make today. So the first step that I'm going to show you with this retiree is we're going to use a baseline plan. So I'll show you what it looks like when they don't do any tax planning and they just continue with the rule of thumb approach of saving in their 401k, where that puts them from age 55 until 65 and through their retirement. Then we'll look at the different tax strategies that we can use, these different tools to shape the battlefield, to shape their income plan, to give them the most favorable outcome. So let's jump into the scenario and take a look. So here in our example, we're looking at our example clients. Thomas is 55 years old. Hannah is actually 10 years younger, and that'll come into play in this scenario for tax planning. And on the screen in front of us, this diagram, what it is showing is their income through time. Now, right now, Thomas is making about $15,000 a month, $180,000 a year, and he is maxing out his 401k contributions, and he's getting a great match from his employer. Now, with that, once they shift into retirement, we can see their other cash flows come into play. So let's walk through this to take a look. So here we are in 2025, and you can see this purple. This indicates Thomas's income at the moment, his monthly income at the moment. And you can see as we go through time, we're assuming he's getting raises. Now, once we hit retirement at age 65, when they're planning to retire, this dark color on the screen, this kind of dark gray, this illustrates taking distributions from the portfolio. And the idea here is they want to keep their spending about constant from working until, and then when they're in retirement. Now, Hannah's a teacher, and she will be receiving right at retirement a small teacher's pension. We go along. Now, you can see here this light blue, what this indicates, you can see there, SSB Thomas. This is Thomas claiming his Social Security benefit. Now, once we go along, Hannah will claim her spousal benefit, and we're off to the races all the way till the end. So this is what their income, with this income roadmap, we can now see their cash flows now and in the future to begin to see, are there planning opportunities available to us? So let's jump over to our tax application to see from a tax standpoint what opportunities are here and what are some of the risks of their plan. So on the screen in front of us, this is our basic tax roadmap, and what it is showing is the taxes that they will pay from year to year, and we can also see the different types of taxes that they'll be subject to. This is really important. When it comes to retirement, your Social Security benefits have their own special taxation. Believe it or not, there's special tax rules even for your Medicare Part B premiums. So whether you have more or less income, this is going to come into play. And if you have higher income, you become subject to other taxes like net investment income tax. And so this gives us a really good idea of how their tax situation will change over time based on just following the rule of thumb approach of putting all of their savings into their 401k plan. So you can see that, in 2025, if we zoom in here on the screen, you can see the taxes are coming from, just from their wages. So we have in the blue here, we have ordinary income tax. Then in the dark blue, we have payroll taxes, FICA taxes. So as we go along, once they retire, those FICA taxes drop off and we just have ordinary income. Well, you can see here that as we go to 2045, all of a sudden, their taxes really start to ramp up. Ordinary income taxes go up, almost exponentially. And then we have some different types of taxes that are coming into play here. You can see this light green. This is Medicare IRMA surcharges. So what these are the increased premiums you have to pay to Medicare if your income goes above certain thresholds. And as you make more income, the amount you have to pay for Medicare goes up and up. Now, also, because their income is increasing, we have other taxes that are coming into play. We can see long-term capital gains are coming in, as well as net investment income tax. Now, net investment income tax and long-term capital gains, these are coming in because they're taking money out of their IRA or out of their 401k account, and that money is then turning around and being invested just in a brokerage account. Now, you might say, well, then if they're coming into these extra taxes, why don't they just, stop taking extra money out of their 401k? And this is the key here. When you have a 401k plan or other pre-tax retirement accounts, you are subject to something called required minimum distributions. And so once you hit age 75, you are forced to take out money even if you don't need it for spending. And I'll say from my experience working with retirees over, the last 10 years, usually in somebody's early retirement years, they're spending and enjoying their money, but usually once you hit those maybe, mid to late 70s, early 80s, the pace of life really tends to slow down. And so with Social Security, and in this case, Hannah has a pension, it's often the case that those income sources are going to cover all of your needs. And so now you have a situation where you have to take money out of your IRA or 401k. It increases your taxes on your Social Security benefits, increases the amount that you have to pay for Medicare, and it forces you into the situation where you're paying net investment income tax, an extra 3.8% taxes, just because all of your money is within a 401k and you have to take these required distributions. So as we go along, you can see that these other income sources or these other taxes become a greater and greater part of their overall tax situation. Another element of this particular client situation that's very important. With Thomas and Hannah, there's a large age gap between them. Hannah is 10 years younger than Thomas. Because of this, if we go with averages, men typically, pass away younger than women. And with the age difference, it's likely here that Hannah will live on for many years without Thomas in the picture. Because of that, there's also a situation where from a tax filing status, they're going to go from married filing jointly down to Hannah eventually become a single tax filer. The reason this is important for tax planning is that once that happens, she will be able to have less income and she'll have to pay, with less income, she'll have to pay higher and higher tax rates. Now, the thing is, they have this large 401k account that's been saved up between the two of them. And so even though she doesn't need the money, now we're talking about a single person household. She probably needs less income, but all the more so, she is forced to take out money and she has to pay that at higher tax rates. And the level for her Medicare Part B premiums will also go up. So you can really have a very disadvantageous tax situation when you have all of your money not only in a 401k account, but then also if there's an age disparity between spouses, because you could be in a situation where you go from married filing jointly down to a single filer status and really run into a tax wall at that point. Now that we have looked at the rule of thumb approach, let's look at what are some of the strategies that Thomas and Hannah could implement now before they retire to create a better overall tax situation. Remember that every dollar they pay less in taxes is an extra dollar that can go towards things that are important to them, like being able to travel more or do things with their children and grandchildren. Even doing things like pre-retirement, if they're not saving as heavily, and if they know that they're going to be in a good financial situation, there's plenty of other financial priorities they have pre-retirement. Their children are transitioning into college and getting married and moving into adulthood. And so there's lots of things that maybe they'd like to do that they would be able to do if they freed up some of that money going into retirement towards those other important financial goals. So some of the key tools here that I would look at with a retiree are things like, do you like to give to charity? The reason for this is that, especially when somebody has a large 401k balance, there is a powerful tool called a qualified charitable distribution that they can use to reduce their tax liability in retirement. The qualified charitable distribution allows somebody to take a portion of their required minimum distribution. We have so many acronyms. The Army here is a nice parallel as well. There are so many acronyms, and it's hard to keep everything straight. But the qualified charitable distribution, or QCD, allows somebody to take a portion of their RMD, or even all of it, and send it directly to charity. Now, this is important because by so doing, this will reduce somebody's adjusted gross income and maybe even benefit them in the way of reducing the amount they pay on their Medicare surtaxes, as well as just their overall federal and state income tax rates. So it's a very powerful tool. The other strategy that we can look at with these clients is beginning now, since they still have 10 years before their planned retirement, begin now to start shifting some of that savings that was going into pre-tax and shift some of it into Roth accounts. By doing this, of course, they are going to miss out on some tax savings now before they retire. But since we made since we looked at their timeline, we can see that their taxes actually will go up. If we don't do anything, they are most likely to go up significantly in retirement. So we don't have to go all out and shift all of their money into Roth, their new contributions, but we can just do a portion of them. And so with this client, what we ended up recommending is they're going to take half of their contributions, will continue to go into their 401k. Now, of course, their employer match will continue to go into the 401k as well, but then that other half of their deferrals, they're going to shift over into a Roth 401k. So with this combination of shifting money into the Roth 401k and helping them take advantage of qualified charitable distributions, and then thirdly, we're going to look at doing a proactive Roth conversion strategy in the years from when they retire until they reach RMD age to see if the combination of those three tools can help them overall improve their tax situation. So let's jump back to our case study and look at and compare these two scenarios to see what are some of the potential tax savings from this proactive tax planning pre-retirement. All right, so now on the screen, what we're looking at is actually, we're comparing what I'm calling their tax smart plan compared with just the baseline plan. And you can see that actually, as we compare these two strategies, right now we're not incorporating any of the Roth conversions, the qualified charitable distributions, anything like that. At this point, you can see that as we compare these two plans, the choice to not contribute to all of their money to 401k in those 10 years pre-retirement, you can see that actually, overall, as we look at their lifespan, that will actually cause them to pay a higher amount in taxes. Because remember, by doing those Roth contributions as opposed to pre-tax contributions, that they're missing out on some tax deductions. You know, it's not a complete free lunch. So now let's overlay the addition of doing some Roth conversions between the moment of retirement and before they reach 75 for full retirement age. Are there going to be some significant tax savings from incorporating that into the plan? So for this, we've looked at lots of different strategies, and we're going to look at now, what if once they retire, they do Roth conversions up to the 22% tax bracket and max that out? What is the impact for that overall in terms of average taxes paid over their entire life, net income and net legacy, how that is impacted? You can see by simply doing that, what this ends up doing is it has the power of saving them this has the impact of saving them about an average of 1% overall in their tax rate through retirement. If we looked at a more aggressive Roth conversion strategy, you would see that actually we could even increase the savings here, but we also have to take into consideration the break-evens. You know, how long is it going to take for them to recognize that tax savings? And so this is kind of a moderate approach for them to proactively save some money in taxes, but not bet everything on an aggressive Roth conversion strategy. But the impact overall is pretty incredible. We're looking at a projected tax savings of about $3.5 million. Now, correspondingly, that leads to an increase of total retirement income, net income of about $3.5 million, and even increases their likely net legacy that they would be leaving to their children and family once they pass away. It's not their main priority, but especially because Hannah is younger than Thomas, they want to make sure that they are not planning on spending all of their money so that she's financially secure if she ends up living, quite a long time. So you can see that with these simple tools of, number one, mapping out their spending from now while they're still working all the way to the end of retirement, then using some of these tools that are available to us like Roth conversions, making Roth contributions, doing qualified charitable distributions. Now all of a sudden we can see that by taking these small steps, implementing these simple financial planning tools, it has the power to significantly improve their financial well-being, not only now, but throughout the rest of their life. Now, as you're watching this video, you might be thinking, oh, great, I'm going to go ahead and do these things that are in this video. I want to say that these recommendations for these clients are very specific. The details of your situation are very relevant to whether or not any of these particular techniques or all these techniques are going to make sense for your situation. So before you go out and just start, I'm going to go ahead and do Roth conversions, I'm going to start doing Roth contributions or these sorts of things, you need to first map out your income now to the end of retirement using some realistic assumptions and being able to understand all the different tax rules that are at play to know what tools are going to make the most sense for your situation. Now you should understand why your 401k might be your biggest risk in retirement and how to manage it. Just like you saw with my client, there are many strategies that you can use to help reduce your 401k tax liability. However, it is important to note that the strategies I used with my client are highly personal. If you blindly start using them without a proper plan, you could end up doing more harm than good. So to make sure that you're using these methods correctly to secure your retirement, I'm offering a complimentary one-on-one session with me. I'll review your current plan and show you step-by-step how to use these strategies to your advantage while avoiding common pitfalls. To book a call with me, click the link in the description, and I will see you in the next one.